Hi, everyone. In today's pod, I remember getting to the end of high school and not having a clue about how to go to college and not wanting to get a job. Is there something in your life, an event that changed the course of the rest of your life and turned out to be pointing towards your destiny? That's what happened to me.
What's happening today? What are you thinking about? When you're walking down the street, is your head in a cloud? Don't you want to know what's going on? Let's go! Checking in with Mary Lynn. Checking in with Mary Lynn. Checking in with Mary Lynn. Let's check in with Mary Lynn.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for hopping into the podcast. I'm really excited. Today's pod is a bit of a dive back into my history and looking at what makes me me, more specifically, what drives me. Maybe something at the time you didn't quite know was leading you to your destiny, your calling. Because I think a lot of people, I don't know, I should take a poll. I was going to say most people don't know what they want to do, and it's interesting to find those things that propel us forward that you do because you want to do them, or maybe in reaction to something else that you don't want to do. When I was in high school, I didn't really like it. Serious question, not rhetorical. Does anybody like high school? Did anybody genuinely like high school? Mine was fine. I did a really good job at being a good soldier of life, putting on a good face and fighting the fight, getting good grades, enough that I could get by and no one would bother me, having enough friends to be friendly, but still feeling like I was waiting for my life to start and that I wasn't fully participating, that I was hiding behind what I was doing. The real me was somewhere deep inside. I didn't learn anything. I didn't learn a language. I was terrible at math, at science, at history, at geometry, at chemistry. I was okay at literature, not very good. I was told to highlight the important parts in books, and they all seemed important to me. I just felt a little bit like I didn't know what the F was going on most of the time or why we were studying stuff. And I had so much to go through in my own head that I couldn't really fill it with other information that didn't really have anything to do with me. It's some issues that I was working through. I always liked the theater, and I liked acting pretty much, and in high school, and art a little bit. When I got to the end of high school, my two good friends were both going to really good colleges, and they had taken their AP courses. I still don't know what AP stands for. Yeah, that's how not smart I am. And they had both gotten in, and they had done all this work and pointed themselves in that direction, and I didn't know you were supposed to do that. It just didn't occur to me, and nobody told me. Maybe they did, and I didn't hear them. My family, I grew up working class. My parents were not college graduates. And suddenly it was time to go, and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't want to just go to some college and have it be a repeat of high school, of subjects that I didn't want to take again. Somehow I got the idea of art school, and I figured out that there was an art school nearby. And I found out that they had a recruiting day, a day you could go and show your wares and get advice. So I busted out some drawings, a charcoal drawing, a still life, a figurative. And I was okay at art. Here is my art background, the little bit from high school, which is, a grab bag of unfocused, just messing around. And my parents had enrolled me in a watercolor class in a strip mall where I painted watercolors of cards, recreated greeting cards along with 60-year-old women. And those were my painting skills. And those I brought to my charcoal drawings because it said, if you want to go to recruit day at art school, you have to show your stuff. And I didn't know. I just kind of made it up and drew it and blended it and went there. I don't even know how I found out about it. We didn't have the internet. What did I hear it on the radio? Or looked it up in a book? I honestly have no idea how I found out about that, but I got myself there, went in there, and they looked over my stuff. And I remember applying there and being given a partial scholarship based on that work. Can you believe it? And so I started commuting to art school, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. I commuted to Detroit to the school in my parents' Chevy Sprint. It was gold colored from our house in the suburbs. I put tuition on a credit card, and I also waited tables. And I went to school in the morning and waited tables on the weekend and some nights at Denny's. I know, if you weren't impressed with me before, you're going to be impressed now. I could do a whole podcast on working at Denny's, and maybe I will. I had dyed my hair platinum blonde, of course, and it was cut short, and that was my look I was rocking when I started art school. And art school was delightful to me. It really blew my mind. I got to learn the basics of design, which I knew nothing about. And I remember having teachers who were real artists and who really understood it and who cared. There was one who took us on a walkabout to the Art Institute, and he would show us ordinary object, and then he would point to like a Rodin sculpture and say, see, artists designed everything, whether it's fine art or an object, somebody has to design it. And then he was very flamboyant and, would say, what is art? Do you have what it takes to live the artist lifestyle? And he wore a tweed jacket with a vest and a bow tie, and his hair was parted on the side. He was a little dramatic and pretentious, but you need that in your life. Somebody to give you that dream, that thing that you can want to sink your teeth into. And I listened to him talk and take us around and show us things in the world and discuss their lines and their inherent beauty, just because and he said, an artist designs the world. And I listened to him with wonder. Of course, I didn't show it on my face. I showed a blank stare with no emotion. But inside, I was smiling, and I thought, I wonder if I have what it takes to be an artist. I wonder if I can do that. I loved the drawing class. We had nude figure drawing, or clay. You did sculptures, all the classics. Drawing with a flashlight on some white objects, so you just had to draw the shadows. That was the concentration. Sculpture class, paper making, weaving. Did that happen? But I also, art history I enjoyed. I got very sleepy. There was a lot of slides in a dark room. But that was very cool. And I remember making a lot of bad art. Sculpture I was particularly bad at, because I would wait and I would put a lot of pressure on myself to create something good, even though I was just beginning. I was best at the classes that just were basic design things, where there was no pressure that you were creating a work of art. That always made me lose my mind. And I just would make trash, sometimes literally made out of trash. One time it was a barrel with sticks and branches in it that I put on a pedestal. One time it was pieces of styrofoam that I tried to put together. And, I remember being in the figure drawing class, and everyone said, oh, he's hard. This teacher is hard. And all the serious students you had to draw all the bones in the body to exact detail and use grid paper and measure them, and he would correct you. And I was not very good at trying to exactly copy something from a book, and that made me lose my mind. I did not do well in that class at all. My favorite class was painting because I could, and my favorite teacher was a watercolorist, and he painted with oil and acrylic, and he used a lot of colors, and he had marionettes and puppets in his room, and if he liked you, you got to come to his house, which was filled with circus objects and dolls and puppets and flowers and plants and things that would look good in a composition, and he loved crazy objects in a composition. And he was gay, but he was very nervous, and I don't think he was out as gay, but he was super gay, and I didn't even know what gay was, but I knew he was gay. And he would go and smoke in the closet, and then he would eat a bunch of mints to cover it up, and he would come and he would look at your painting and go, that's okay. And if he said that's okay, that you were on the right track and it was really, really good, better than anything you've ever done. And I loved that school. And it came time to go into your third and fourth year where you get your own studio. The studios were kind of depressing, if I'm honest, but that meant that you were growing into your second half of your college life. And a friend of mine, she told me that next semester she was going to go to the sister school in San Francisco. And something exploded inside of me and reached out. It was more than a yearning. It was just, I instantly knew I have to do that. I have to do what you're doing. I want to do that too. And it wasn't jealousy. I mean, that was part of it, but the larger part of it was just an instant decision of, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go there. And it was too late to apply for it, but I pushed my application through anyway, and I went, and I told her, we're going to go together. And she said to me, we're going to go together. And I said, great. I used to go to her apartment. She had an apartment on campus, and I remember she used to make tuna fish with a slice of American cheese put on an English muffin, open-faced tuna fish sandwich with a slice of cheese on each half, and heat it up in her toaster oven. But she was a stoner too. And also, she was a little bit spoiled. And so she left her dishes dirty in the sink, and she wouldn't rinse them, and she left the tuna can open, and I remember there being flies, and I thought, why not just rinse it out? To this day, when you put the dish in the sink, you rinse that shit off. Even if you're not going to clean it right that second, get the food stuff off of it. Don't be disgusting. Anyway, she was also the first person to tell me that she was bisexual. I thought she was telling me that she was dying of cancer, and she really laid it on me. She really drew it out and said, I have to tell you something. She was super nervous, and I didn't even know what that meant. And then I was like, oh, okay, geez, I thought you were dying. So that was my friend that I got to move to San Francisco with. And this was something wonderful about it that ended up being kind of stressful, but it helped me get there, was that her and her dad bought her a car to go there. Wasn't I lucky? I got to tag along and go with her, be roommates with her. And they went out and got us an apartment. And I said, yeah, we're going to get this apartment together. And so I remember she came to get me in her Corolla, white, and pulled up in my parents' driveway. And I was standing on the porch with 2 black, hefty trash bags full of my clothes and things I was going to take with me. She pulls into the driveway, and I looked in her car. It was completely full with her stuff, with just a small space etched out in the front seat for me, surrounded by bags in the back. And in the center of the car, coming over like the size of the length of a surfboard, was a large rain stick. Yeah, I said rain stick. It's the instrument. Is it related to the didgeridoo? No, it's the shape of a didgeridoo. It's a cylinder. It's a small tree branch that's hollow inside and sealed off on either end that you turn over, and little apple seeds or something go through the center like plinko, hitting on little sticks that are poking along the way, and it makes a beautiful sound of rain. I think this was part of her spiritual practice, and she had it in the center of the car. And when I saw this, I just set down one of my trash bags and went and got in the car. And we drove across country. It was super fun. She liked to get stoned and listen to Depeche Mode and Soul to Soul. And the beginning of the rest of our lives was about to begin. I remember how magical it was when we stopped for gas just outside of San Francisco. And we went over the Bay Bridge for the first time into Soma District, south of Market, right? Our apartment was on Market near the Castro, and it was on the 3rd floor. I want to say it cost $375 per person a month. And it had a little kitchen, a living room, and then on either side of the living room were the bedrooms. And she put her rain stick up, and she had scarves in her bed and set up all of her things. Beads, incense, crystals, stones. She would collect them as we started our life, as the days went on. And I was in my bedroom on a mattress on the floor with my belongings surrounding me, strewn about on the floor. And I went to go get a job waiting tables when we first got there, and there were no jobs to be had because there were tons of young people there, and waiting tables was a great job that people coveted, and they got them and they held on to them. I remember walking into places and walking out like it wasn't even possible to ask for a job. They would just look at you like you were nuts. I started to get very nervous, and I would cry at night. And she would tell me that it's going to be okay, but I wanted to tell her it's not going to be okay. I don't know how I'm going to pay for this shit. But on the other hand, being in the city was a magical experience. I loved the public transit. I loved the city. It was so beautiful and so inspiring and so different. And I ended up getting a minimum wage job at Double Rainbow Ice Cream. I'm going to go ahead and say I was paid $3.75 an hour. I don't remember, but we'll just make everything $3.75. And I think I just didn't eat. I would have one burrito a day, and on those days that I work shifts at Double Rainbow Ice Cream would be, I would just craft a meal. I would get in there. You would start with, maybe a vanilla, and then you would, as an appetizer, then you're going to hit your bottom, your ice cream that's got some girth to it, your heavy base ice cream, such as a chocolate peanut butter. That's going to be your heaviest entree of ice cream. Or maybe, more like a chicken parmesan, and get the cookie dough ice cream is going to be a lighter dish. And then you would cleanse your palate in between with a lemon sorbet or raspberry sorbet, and you'd go in for another course. Every once in a while, I would try Rocky Road, never liked it. Every once in a while, I would make myself a milkshake. That would be a special day. But yeah, I would just eat ice cream the entire shift, and really ride that line to being sick a little bit. And we started school in San Francisco. The campus was absolutely gorgeous. And it was on the 2nd floor next to Lombard Street, the curviest street in the world. And it was an old building, and our cafeteria overlooked the San Francisco Bay. And the school itself was much more pretentious than the one in Detroit. I think a lot of the teachers lived through the 70s, the early 70s, when there was the blossoming performance art movement, in my opinion, that kind of the changes in the art world made it so that not obsolete, I guess not. What's the word just before you get to obsolete? Just kind of dead. Like the basic drawing classes were boring. They didn't seem pertinent And everything was about the concept and high concept, because performance art is like, hey man, you're making art, but you don't have to use the materials anymore. And it blew people's mind, but it also kind of made things fall apart a little bit, because how do you teach that? In the painting classes, it was all about posturing and people acting like they're the greatest artist and being able to like talk a good talk. And I got really disillusioned. Plus it was really expensive to, I didn't understand why I would make a painting and carry it across town and try to put it in the small locker. Like, what if I didn't want to make that size painting? And then how am I supposed to afford supplies to paint this thing, this object that now exists that nobody wants? But then I have to finagle a way to talk my way into making my work seem like it means something in the larger world. And then try to get into the gallery system. I really didn't grasp it. But as I say that, at the same time, I myself was in performance art. I had a class about for performance art, and that was my favorite class. But it also was a class that indicated sort of the death of art's importance in the world that I thought I wanted to be in. I mean, some other people, I'm sure, have taken that route and found their way, but for me, the performance art was the only way to go, and it was a perfect way for me to experiment with what would become my comedy and my acting. But at that time, you would do your piece and the class would watch your piece. And a lot of them were more sculptural. Mine was definitely performer audience oriented. That's the first time I saw a guy put on lipstick. His piece was taping his genitals to the side and putting on lipstick in a mirror as we watched him. This was about the self and identity. Another woman was obese, and she, when the class wasn't there, she had pre-set up a ton of butter pats, like dominoes, and the piece was crawling on the floor, slowly, sadly, picking up butter pat after butter pat, so that everyone felt her personal pain. Another piece was a guy and a girl dressed in black body socks, like they got a material, so they were like beans all tied up their entire body from head to toe, and then they crawled down flights of stairs. So that was another sculptural piece for us all to ponder our little art school brains. Another guy took us to the second story of the school, went on this ledge, and his piece was jumping from the ledge to a tree that was in the yard to see if he made it or not. He did make it, barely. He did slam into the tree. And that wasn't even my favorite piece. My favorite bad performance art piece was a guy had us leave the classroom. He showed us that he had 2 bread makers and some dough, and we left the classroom. And we waited about 45 minutes until the bread was done, and we came in the bread machine. And we came back in, and he fed us hot, homemade, warm bread, which, by the way, was delicious, in the middle of the school day when you're a hungry student. And then he informed us that half the bread had plaster from the wall in it, and half of it didn't, and that the piece was about communism. Still to this day, I don't understand what that means. My piece, a lot of my pieces were, one of them was a cardboard structure, and I did a monologue from inside of it about collecting the heads of pirates. I can't really explain to you what that meant. One of mine was a cardboard podium that I built, but it kept falling apart, and I had a bunch of papers as if I was making a speech. So it was a speech that started and stopped, and I had a hanger that was a pointer, but it was all bent, and it kept falling apart, and I kept picking it back up. Basically, that is a classic comedy sketch that I was improvising without realizing it, because I was attracted to it. And one of my more dramatic ones was my foot was tied to the ceiling, and I placed a podium with a bowl of jelly beans just out of my reach. And I did a monologue about how my husband tied me up to the ceiling and left me that way until he got home from work. Anyway, this podcast has come to an end, and this was a chapter of my life where I did these performance art pieces in the safety of art school, and I got laughter, and that felt really good, and that led to me the beginning of my doing comedy sets out in and around San Francisco at open mic, mostly at open mic poetry nights, but it was there in my performance art classes that people laughed at me, and I didn't really know that I was telling jokes. And ever since then, it's been a journey to figure out what's so funny, guys. What's so funny? Thanks for tuning in. I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm always a couple steps behind. Thanks for tuning in, and let me know if you have turning points in your life, turns that you made, big changes that led you to what you were supposed to do. Peace out. Thanks for listening.